India's Voice to the World. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, Prime Ministers of India and Bangladesh to jointly inaugurate 3 development projects today, aimed to boost connectivity and energy security in the region. An Israeli air attack hits apartment blocks in a residential area of densely populated refugee camp, killing and wounding hundreds. Heavy clashes reported in Gaza. Britain brings together government officials and technology leaders for a summit on the safety of artificial intelligence, which begins today. Unprecedented trial underway in the U.S. state of Colorado, where a group of Republican and unaffiliated voters tried to block Donald Trump from appearing in the state's 2024 presidential ballot. In ICC Cricket World Cup on Wednesday, New Zealand to take on in-form South Africa in the clash of tournament heavyweights. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, will jointly inaugurate 3 Indian-assisted development projects on Wednesday. The 3 projects are Akhora-Agartala cross-border rail link, Khulna-Mongla port rail line, and Unit 2 of Maitri super thermal power plant. The Akhora-Agartala cross-border rail link project has been executed under Government of India grant assistance. The Khulna-Mongla port rail line project has been implemented under India's concessional line of credit, and the Maitri super thermal power project under Indian concessional financing scheme loan of $1.6 billion US. India's Finance Minister Nala Sitaraman will embark on a 3-day official visit to Sri Lanka starting today. During her visit, she will address the NAM 200 organised by the government of Sri Lanka to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the arrival of Indo-Eurasian Tamils. The event will be graced by Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardene. Nirmala Sitaraman will also address the India-Sri Lanka Business Summit at Colombo, among other events. Also, as part of her official visit, she will call on President and Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. She will also witness the exchange of a memorandum of understanding for solar electrification of religious places in Sri Lanka. India's External Affairs Minister Dr Shankars held productive talks with his Portuguese counterpart, João Craveno, during his visit to Portugal, exchanging the views on various global issues and discussed progress in bilateral cooperation. Also, the minister praised Portugal's support for India-EU relations. He met with other Portuguese officials and paid his respects to Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi in Lisbon. India's Education and Skill Development Minister Dharmendra Pradhan is embarking on a 3-day visit to the United Arab Emirates from 1st November to 3rd November. During his visit, the minister will hold discussions with key UAE ministers, officials, educators, Indian community representatives and business leaders. The agenda includes visits to educational institutions and meetings with UAE education leaders. Also, this visit serves as a platform for both countries to enhance their educational and skill development systems, promising mutual benefits and growth. And Israel-Hamas war, in fact, as Israel-Hamas war enters into the 25th day, early morning Israeli attack on a densely populated Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza killed at least 50 people and injured many more on Tuesday. The rescue operations are underway. The attack is being condemned across the Arab world and has been denounced by humanitarian organizations. Israeli tanks and troops meanwhile continue to advance towards some of northern Gaza's most populated areas, including Jabalia. Amritpal Singh joins us from Israel on the latest. Amrit, we know that the war is intensifying. It is well in the fourth week, nearing almost a month now. Let us understand from you what are the implications of the war as it intensifies, and also what could be the possible fallouts.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the war is in its fourth week now, but everybody, including the Israelis, have been saying that it's going to be a long and protracted battle. They realize the complications, the challenges the war poses for them, because to achieve their stated objective of completely decimating the Hamas, they need to get into close combat. For that, they would need to go in for a ground invasion, which they have, though in a limited number. But the troops on the ground are right now being aided by the Air Force, their own UAVs and drones, they've encircled the Gaza city and are poised to go in. There have been some visuals of both sides hitting each other, and the numbers from both sides vary as to what the casualties are. I'm talking about the soldier casualties and the Hamas casualties. Both sides have their own claims. But the fact remains that, to achieve their stated purpose, they would have to go in for an all-in invasion, a close combat, getting into tunnels, perhaps gassing the tunnels out, using sponge bombs, etc., to get the Hamas overground. Then the other challenge is, how do they distinguish between Hamas and the civilians? Because Hamas follows no rules of war. They will blend in with the civilians, or as the apprehensions are being expressed, they could use the civilians as human shields. So what happens then? The casualty, there'll be a steep climb in the casualty numbers of the civilians. Already it's very high, 8,000 plus, of which, according to UN, 70% are children and women. So how do they deal with that? I think what would be weighing on Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet's mind is how to achieve the stated military purpose and how to keep these numbers low, because that would mean the civilian casualties low, because that would mean a lot of international pressure, and Netanyahu will have to factor that in. That how would he deal with that? How would he deal with his allies who are till now supporting him, then pushing back? Though he said that there is no question of a ceasefire, but because of that, I think the all-out invasion hasn't happened so far. And then there's this whole question of hostages. What happens if Hamas starts executing them? Half of 239 or 240 is the number being pegged right now, half of them foreign nationals. How would those countries react? Because for them, getting their nationals out is the first priority. And even Israelis, women, children, elderly have been taken, soldiers have been taken hostages. Once Hamas starts executing them and that starts blaring on television screens inside Israel, how would the Israeli population feel? What would it mean for the political future of Benjamin Netanyahu? So all that would be weighing on him and his government's mind before they take a decision. So these are the implications and the fallout.
All right, Amrit, thank you for joining in with those details. The United States is sending an additional 300 troops to the Middle East with focus on providing support in areas like explosive, ordnance disposal and also communications. Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said that the troops are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities.
Today, I can announce the decision to deploy an additional 300 troops to the U.S. Central Command region from home stations in the continental United States. These additional troops will provide capabilities in explosive ordnance disposal, communications, and other support enablers for forces already in the region. Please note that we will not discuss specific deployment locations for these forces, but I can confirm they are not going to Israel, and that they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities.
Relatives of those held hostage by Hamas called on French authorities and the international community to help secure their release. At a press conference organized by the Israeli embassy in Paris, a delegation of families of people kidnapped and held in Gaza asked for international pressure to be put on Hamas and countries that host their members. The relatives of hostages were in Paris as part of a trip organized by Israeli Bar Association to draw attention to the situation of Israeli hostages held in Gaza. More than 200 hostages have been seized by Hamas in a cross-border rampage into Israel. Families of Israeli hostages held by Hamas gathered in Tel Aviv, carrying photographs of their loved ones. Relatives have been worried since the military stepped up ground assaults inside the Palestinian territory. During the gathering on Tuesday, some carried a sign calling for a ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with some of the families on October 28th, and in a video his office released, he said that recovering the hostages was an integral part of the military's goals. Hamas took more than 230 hostages, including children, back into Gaza during its raid. Israel has acknowledged that it was behind the strike, saying it was targeting a high-ranking Hamas commander.
Our forces are currently fighting deep inside the Gaza Strip. They are killing terrorists in close-range combat, conducting coordinated strikes on terror targets from land, air and sea. During the afternoon hours, infantry and armored forces secured a central Hamas stronghold in the western part of Jabalia. This stronghold served as a training center for the October 7th massacre and a passage to the coastline from where additional terrorists set off to perpetrate the October 7th massacre. In the course of the fighting, we eliminated many terrorists and destroyed terror infrastructure. This is complicated combat, some of which is face-to-face combat. During the combat, we lost soldiers.
While countries upset with the recent Israel attack on the Gaza Strip are recalling their Israel's ambassadors, Chilean President Gabriel Boric took to his social media account and said that his government is recalling its envoy to Israel, Jorge Carvajal, for consultations in light of what Boric said were unacceptable violations of international humanitarian law by Israel in the Gaza Strip. Followed by that, Colombian President Gustavo Petro also made the announcement on social media saying that they're recalling its ambassador to Israel for consultations. US President Joe Biden and Jordan's King Abdullah on Tuesday discussed their shared commitment to increased aid to civilians in Gaza during the Israel-Hamas conflict. The two leaders also reiterated the importance of protecting civilian lives and that it was critical to ensure that Palestinians were not forcibly displaced from Gaza. Biden and King Abdullah discussed urgent ways to stem violence and reduce regional tensions. US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping will be meeting in San Francisco later this month. The meeting will be held on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in San Francisco. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters on Tuesday that the two leaders are aiming to have a constructive meeting. Biden, his National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken discussed the prospect for a Biden-Xi summit in talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at the White House and at the State Department on Friday. Now, the APEC summit is to take place in mid-November.
I mean, we've been talking about, the president said he's looking forward to meeting with President Xi, and so not going to get into details about this meeting that's going to happen it's going to be in San Francisco. It's going to be a constructive meeting. The president's looking forward to it.
Up next, we're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. A train transporting fuel charred in the Russian-controlled Ukrainian city of Donetsk after Ukrainian shelling. Orange juice prices reached their highest since 1966 due to limited production in the US, Brazil and Mexico. Southern California experiences massive fire hazard due to Santa Ana winds, causing evacuation of 4,000 people.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such
changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live and I'm Preeti Kaur. Up next, we'll continue getting you more international updates. An unprecedented trial is underway in the U.S. state of Colorado, where a group of Republican and unaffiliated voters is trying to block Donald Trump from appearing on the state's 2024 presidential ballot. They say a Civil War-era law barring insurrectionists from running for office disqualifies the former president, but Trump's team says that everything he said about the 2020 election being stolen is within his free speech rights. Tony Waterman has more on this.
In opening statements, lawyers for the voters argued that Donald Trump is ineligible to appear on the ballot because of his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, which they say violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. That amendment says any person who has sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, which U.S. presidents do, is disqualified from holding office if they have engaged in insurrection and rebellion. To try and prove their point, they played snippets from Trump's fiery speech to supporters ahead of the 2021 riot, where he told the crowd to, quote, fight like hell. Lawyers argued that Trump knew the power of his words, but the former president's defense team has dismissed the lawsuit as anti-democratic, insisting that Trump took precautions to avoid violence and used the word peace several times during that now infamous speech. This case is considered a long shot for the prosecution. Not only has Trump not been convicted of insurrection, he hasn't even been charged with it in the 4 criminal cases against him. Still, Trump is facing similar disqualification cases in at least 4 other states, including Minnesota, where the state's Supreme Court will take up the case on Thursday. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's children are set to take the stand at his fraud trial case in New York starting this week. Donald Trump Jr. is expected to kick things off on Wednesday, followed by Eric and Ivanka, who will take the stand after her father next week. They are all current or former executives of the Trump organization, and prosecutors say the former president artificially inflated the value of his assets in financial statements to secure better loan rates and insurance policy. Trump calls the case a witch hunt and is expected to take the stand himself next week. Tony Waterman in Austin reporting for DD India.
U.S. President Joe Biden travels to Minnesota later today for a speech about how his administration's economic plans are helping rural America. The White House is ramping up events across the country to try and get voters on side ahead of next November's election. U.S. markets were largely unchanged in Tuesday's trading ahead of the speech. Nick Harper gets us details from Washington.
Well, here we have President Joe Biden in full campaigning mode, just over a year before the 2024 presidential election. The choice of Minnesota, a must-win state, shows the incumbent courting the rural America vote. The White House says that the speech will focus on how government spending, along with Biden's policies, has helped improve people's lives. The president plans to outline how his government is ensuring rural Americans do not have to leave their hometowns to find opportunities. It comes off the back of federal investment to help farmers and ahead of critical infrastructure improvements, including high-speed internet for rural communities. Top Biden officials are planning a series of trips to around 15 other states, including Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, and New Hampshire. With the economy expected to be one of the main issues in next year's election, the president is really trying to show voters how nearly 3 years of the Biden administration has helped their pocketbooks and convince them that they're better off now, despite high inflation and interest rates at their highest level in 22 years. The president's speech, though, is not expected to move markets much during Wednesday's trading. Instead, Wall Street will be eyeing the end of the Federal Reserve's 2-day policy meeting. That wraps up on Wednesday afternoon in Washington and is expected to end with the central bank deciding not to raise interest rates. But the Fed has warned rate hikes will continue in the coming months to try and get inflation under control. In Washington, Nick Harper, reporting for DD India.
All right, from the US to the UK now. Britain is bringing together government officials and technology leaders for a summit on the safety of artificial intelligence, which begins today. Participants will be discussing the risks and benefits from technology, as well as the considerations that need to be made when it comes to regulation. Julia Chapman reports from London on this.
World leaders always acknowledge the potential benefits that artificial intelligence will bring. But over the next 2 days, it's the risks of AI that will be front and center. The British government has focused on what it sees as a long-term existential threat from artificial intelligence. Concerns revolve around the potential of AI to become sentient and for hackers and terrorists to use the technology for malevolent acts. But critics say that emphasis ignores the more immediate risks, including racist biases, disinformation, and violations of data protection. The UK has so far shied away from regulating AI, preferring to adapt existing legal frameworks. The European Union, meanwhile, is moving forward with dedicated legislation, while US President Joe Biden signed an executive order earlier this week, mandating that AI companies share details with the government of how they are ensuring safety if there is a potential threat to national security. There's also been controversy over the participation of China in the summit. The Chinese Vice Minister of Science and Technology will take part in working groups on day 1, although he isn't invited to day 2. China and the US are the global leaders when it comes to artificial intelligence. President Biden is sending Vice President Kamala Harris to take part in the UK's summit. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, will also be attending and will hold a live Q&A with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on Thursday. The UK is hoping that this summit will help it become a leader in AI safety worldwide. But the event has been overshadowed by war in the Middle East and undermined by the small number of leaders attending. It's expected that a global advisory board on regulation will be launched at the end of the 2-day event, aimed at finding a common approach to tackling the challenges of the future. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
A train transporting fuel caught fire in the Russian-controlled Ukrainian city of Donetsk on Tuesday after the Ukrainian shelling. As per the media reports, a person was killed and several others were injured, including 3 reporters as a result of the shelling across the city. Up next, we get you other stories which are making it to the headlines from across the world. Orange juice prices reached their highest since 1966 due to limited production in the US, Brazil and Mexico. The January contract on the Intercontinental Exchange reached an all-time high of $4.17 per pound, up by 90% this year. However, fundamentals remain positive with negative weather and a bacterial disease reducing production in Mexico, the US and also Brazil. Barbara Walters' $8 billion estate spanning over 300 lots is set for a live auction in Bonhams in New York City. The collection, spanning her Upper East Side home, includes a Jean Singer Surgeon painting, a Harry Winston diamond ring, and earrings designed specifically for Walters. Proceeds will go to Walters' charities. Around 50 Brazilian Santas graduated from Rio de Janeiro Santa School on October 31st. They caroled through Santa Teresa, waving at the passerbys. They received their graduation diploma, allowing them to work as official Santas, and a golden key symbolizing the beginning of the Christmas season. During the ceremony, two Father Christmas remembered the Gaza Strip conflict and demanded global peace. 500 baby sea turtles were released into the Pacific Ocean in North Colombia, including Olive Ridley. And this was done through a conservation program by Guardians of Mangrove Association. The association, in collaboration with fishermen, cares for endangered turtle eggs and monitors them for a month and a half before releasing them back into their habitat. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Association of Zoos and Aquariums have launched a pilot wildlife confiscations network in Southern California to ensure wildlife caught in illegal trafficking survives and thrives. The program will place confiscated animals at the Los Angeles Zoo, with plans to expand to other trafficking hotspots like Miami and El Paso in Texas. 4,000 residents of Riverside County were ordered to evacuate after an 890-hectare wildfire in Southern California caused by desert winds broke out. Southern California experienced a massive fire hazard due to Santa Ana winds, causing the Highland fire to nearly double in size overnight. Officials opened refugee centers and evacuated campers from a recreational vehicle resort. The cause of the fire is being investigated and the blaze remains a threat, with several roads closed and evacuation orders in effect. And back home, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will interact with India's Asian Para Games contingent at Major Dhyan Chand National Stadium in New Delhi on Wednesday. The athletes, their coaches, officials from Paralympics Committee of India and also Indian Olympic Association and representatives from national sports federations will attend the program. The program is an endeavour by Prime Minister Modi to congratulate the athletes for their outstanding achievement at the Asian Para Games 2022. India won a total of 111 medals, including 29 golds this year. In ICC Cricket World Cup on Wednesday, New Zealand will take on in-form South Africa in a clash of tournament heavyweights. Two of the in-form teams of the tournament meet in Pune, and this has the potential to act as a precursor to what may lay ahead in the knockout stages of the event. The two sides currently occupy second and third positions on the standings. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.